Sorry. Apologies. Well, I did say when I was up here a few weeks ago that I needed to revisit these wonderful trees with my Bronica. So here I am. Now I do feel a bit guilty here because there's all these freshly shorn sheep resting under these trees and I want to take photographs and they're not going to tolerate me. They're not going to attack me, obviously. But I do feel a bit guilty that I'm moving them on because they're having a bit of a rest out of the wind and rain. And yeah, sorry ladies. I think I did mention, or I have mentioned when I've been up here before, that it's always windy. And when I say always, I mean always. I've never been up here when it's been anything less than blowing a gale. And I'm behind a hill at the moment, so expect a bit of interference on the audio. I mean, just look at these rocks here. It's almost like something up in Ingleton and Malham with this limestone. It's very, very slippery as well, so I'll have to watch my step. Now, when you're faced with so many trees, which all look very similar, it's very difficult to find strong compositions unless you take your time and use your little preview device if you're a film shooter. No use rattling off shots in this preponderance of green until I know if there's sufficient separation of tones, otherwise it's going to be very muted, very dull, very grey. Yes, I will get myself back to the location where I saw a few wonderful trees last time and start with those. Now this is the tree I was marvelling over last time, because I said the branch in front, the broken branch, was like silver. Well, it's not today, it's very wet and it's gone very black, but it does look very good on the preview device. However, if you notice the skyline there behind the tree, even though it's dull today, you can't have that in the shot. Let me just try and show you. I want the tree alone, which means I'll have to go back up onto the bank over here to get high enough to exclude the sky. Problem with that is, at the moment I will need a longish lens, small aperture, camera shake, depth of field problems, heavy rain, so I'm just going to retreat behind the tree for a little bit while the rain hopefully passes or gets worse, and yeah, bit of a time out. Now, it is very difficult to get your motivation levels up in this sort of weather, although it's still summer, allegedly. I struggled to get out here this morning. It rained all the way. It's raining now, it's very windy. I will be struggling to get my shots. However, one of the things about shooting in weather like this in these sort of anonymous locations is you'll get shots nobody else does, I guarantee it. And you will get images which convey more mood, more emotion than a lot of the super-duper bright coloured sunsets, sunrises, etc. They are something personal. They are very different to the run-of-the-mill images. It just means you've got to go out and get wet. Right, brief lull in the rain, here we go. Got the Bronica 150mm lens, two little Coke and P lens hoods just to keep the rain off. Got it at f11, focused in on the tree itself, got no sky in there. I'm going to take two frames, one at an eighth of a second, one at a 15th of a second. Now I'm metering off. Let me just dive in there and show you where I'm metering. I am metering off this. This is where I'm pointing my spot meter at this shadow area here. Now this will turn out black if I'm not careful on the frame, so I'm giving that plenty of exposure. There's no real highlights to worry about, just those branches in the foreground, so I've got no sky, so I don't need to worry about dense blocked up highlights and skies, etc. Also using XP2, which is fantastic for controlling brightness. The characteristic curve tails off at the top and it keeps those bright highlights under control. Well, I achieved a decent separation of tones in this tree. I mean, it does stand out quite nicely, that bright foreground. Shrubbery in the front. It's picked out nicely by the film as well, and overall it's a reasonable composition. It's a little bit jumbled, but I do like that branch coming across the diagonal on the frame. I think that does make it easier to look at. Last time I was here I was fortunate enough to be able to shoot the castle, but today there seems to be some maintenance work going on and some awful orange netting and scaffolds being put up on some of the ramparts, so won't be shootable for a while. Now sadly this is one of the compositions I wanted to shoot, but it's rained so heavily the bark has become literally saturated and it's gone very dark, and it's just a mass of dark tones with not much separation from that soil behind it, so it's not really doing anything for me, sadly. I mean, I would like to shoot some of this sort of long scenery with these trees in the foreground, but the rain is horizontal when it comes, and it gets on the lens immediately because it's into my face, so those shots are out, sadly. I think I'm going to be forced to head over to a little area just off the ridge, which is over here, only because there's a bit more shelter. Already I'm out the wind, fantastic. Oh, here's that tree, which I failed to shoot last time on the video. I'll just show you that now. It's, yes, it's actually okay, this one, apart from the sheep. Go on, off you go, ladies. Because it's remained somewhat dry. Obviously this little sheltered valley behind the main the panorama is going to be one which could yield good results. A bit like last time actually. I couldn't get a good composition with the 35mm camera. Equally today I can't see anything with the Bronica, so it's just not a good composition, full stop. It's rather a nice tree. It's a shame that some people have been here having campfires, and look at the rubbish. Let's just have a barbecue and buy a £1 tent from Aldi and a ground sheet and just throw it away and leave it. Nice. Now, despite the litter and the disgraceful mess it's been left in, this tree is beautiful. I am going to shoot it close up with my 80mm lens. Probably about f11. I don't mind if the background goes a little bit soft. It might help lift the foreground. Might use a filter, might not use a filter, I don't know. It's all quite even though, this one. There's less contrast in it, so it's going to be easier to meter for. Quarter of a second and an eighth of a second, I think, should give me a good spread. The reason I take the 2 is I'll get a slight difference in shadow detail versus highlights. Sometimes I take the thicker negative, sometimes the thinner one, just depends which one I like most. Well, this one's all about the tone and texture of that wonderful gnarly old tree trunk. And I did get the necessary shadow detail in there, which helps massively in giving the overall effect. And it's a sort of good looking silvery black and white, and I do actually prefer this to the earlier one. It's just more simple and stark. Now, whilst these aren't really ideal conditions for taking photographs in, and it is starting to rain heavily again, so I'm getting under the trees, there is something sort of exhilarating about being out in this weather. Now, I have to be honest here, I wouldn't say this was exhilarating. This was wet and windy. I do get periods of enthusiasm while I'm out in these conditions, but I have to be honest, it was pretty tough going. It's so easy to come out on nice days like the last time I was here. Wonderful, clean weather, blue skies, fluffy clouds. Oh yes, you feel so happy to be out. But today is one of those challenging days when, if you do persevere, you can get some interesting photos and the water off the lens. And I don't know, I think these days are the ones that make you actually improve as a photographer. I will have to get a bath when I get home though and wash my hair again, but I'm discovering new locations. Nah, it's getting a bit too wet, unfortunately. I did attempt another setup a couple of minutes ago, but the Bronica was getting very, very wet indeed. And Bronicas don't grow on trees these days, and I don't fancy a big expensive repair bill. So I'm going to make my way back, but I'm almost obsessed with getting 3 shots these days out of a roll, and I do want to get one more, but I will have to find something that's a bit sheltered, but 3 would make it a worthwhile trip, I think. I'm just going to hover around these trees for a minute or two. It looks like there might be a tiny breakette in the ever-present rain. It's a little bit brighter over there, a tiny bit. And maybe that's my optimism getting the better of me, but if it does ease off, I might just make my way over to these trees here, because I did see a very nice one about 9 months ago when I was up here shooting with the Nikon. Nice to get it again. You seem to be sharing the same area, ladies. I was here first. Thank you. Okay, sheep baiting over. Back out onto the escarpment. Back into the rain. God, I'm disturbing more sheep now. I feel awful today. Well, I think I'm going to have to call it quits. I've been defeated on my third shot. It's absolutely tipping it down now. Horizontal rain. I'm soaked. Camera bag's getting a bit wet, so I am going to have to call it quits. So it's a case of Wales 1, English photographer 0. So I hope you enjoyed this very wet vlog. See you again next time.